saw Beatrice when she was 9 years old, and that was it, the whole universe, I believe totally. It makes entire sense to me. That the Greek word is anagnorisis, strange word, the shock of recognition. The comet light, the flash, the sunlight in your body and everything. This is it. It happens around a street corner. You enter a shop and see someone, a shadow on a wall. Does it happen twice? We don't really know. Plato, Dante, Proust, some of the ultimate masters of the meditation on eros suggest it happens only once, and that our later love experiences are a compromise, a mimesis, an imitatio, an attempt to recapture it. Other men say, no, the great love of my life came very late, was totally different from my youth. I've been immensely fortunate, fortunate beyond words, in that these moments, epiphanies, Joyce's great word, epiphany, when the light shines through life, have left me not with a sense of utter regret, because, for instance, with that first young woman, there never was a relationship. She thought quite rightly that I was a ridiculous goose. And a number of times in my life, it's been only a moment. Each one of them has built, I believe, towards my marriage with a very remarkable woman. We've now been together 45 years. And with the acceptance of a seemingly dark word, allow me a few moments because we're touching on something very central. One of the sayings that guides my life is by the great poet Rilke. Rilke says, when there has been a deeply happy love, later on, one becomes the loving guardian of the other's solitude. A word of such depths. Eros does not last forever. Passion does not last forever. I believe, again, contra the incredible Freudian exaggerations, that sexuality, powerful, wonderful, miraculous, is only one of many fundamental forces, and for many human beings, not the most important, but to become the loving guardian of the other's solitude. You move into friendship. Love moves into supreme friendship. And it may be that friendship is finally more important than love. Montaigne said this. It's one of the great taboos in our culture. The Greeks knew this. There are moments in Keats's letters when he says it. Very few have dared say it. The sacredness of friendship, the inviolate elective affinity, Wahlverwandtschaften. What does Montaigne say about la Boétie? It's because he's he and I am I. There's no explanation. That great definition of friendship can be between a man and a woman. And if a marriage flows into friendship, one has been blessed beyond words. Then the early epiphanies have flourished, matured into something enduring. I cannot imagine my existence without being in love in a certain sense. That is to say, I associate love with the future tense. Nothing mystical in this. Please let me argue for its simplicity, for its concrete meaning. Nothing mystical. We don't know whether animals have a future tense of the verb. Tomorrow. We do. We can do something which is unbelievable. Astronomers speak about 1 billion years from now and give exact predictions. You and I can speak about the Monday morning after our funeral. What kind of day will it be? What will be the restaurant menu, the plat du jour? What will be going on in the politics of the Labour Party and so on?
Who will talk about us, yeah.
Who will talk us? The future tense. To be in love is to have a future tense, is to think that things have a meaning tomorrow, that you are moving towards another human identity, a real presence, and that what you think, what you do, when you brush your teeth in the morning in love, it's rather different. There is a wonderful poem by Robert Graves. And to explain to our viewers, we come back to Homer. One always comes back to Homer. The great 18th century English translator, Pope, did a wonderful Homer, but a little stiff. And what English children love are nonsense rhymes by Edward Lear, the Jumblies and the Wumblies and all them on. And this little poem says, we learnt Pope's Iliad by rote, which means by drill, by school drill. We learned Lear's nonsense rhymes by heart. O children, learn to tell these two apart, and never say that aught I wrote in love, I wrote only for love of art. And that says it. What you write in love, you have learned like the nonsense rhymes. It changes the world. I can imagine that there are great abstract powers of mind. Wittgenstein would come to mind, Descartes certainly, Aristotle, for whom this is not true. For whom a certain solitude is the absolute condition of systematically going to the deep, deep, deep places of recognition. Are they enviable? I don't know. I can't imagine myself into their lonely shoes. And I do admire people who are not afraid of being alone, very much. They again have a reinsurance against disaster. Nothing can touch them. And there are really people, Pascal is another one, who say unless you can sit totally alone in an empty room, you haven't become a mature, complete human being. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I wait for the knock on the door when I'm in that room. And I know that to be true, and it's again the limits of one's work and the limits of one's understanding. But when that knock comes, again and again in my life, I've heard the footfall on the stairs of the beloved before she had entered the house, and that is a true experience. There is a projective passion when the feet are coming closer. Dante knew all about that. Great art knows all about that. Music knows all about that. And yes, it makes one extremely vulnerable, extremely. But I love keeping that wound open.
Yeah, at the same time, philosophizing about love. That wonderful passage in Errata. I have stood through a rain-sodden night to catch a glimpse of the beloved turning a corner. Perhaps it was not even she. God have mercy on those we have never known, the hallucination of light which fills the dark during such a vigil.
I totally believe that. People who are immune to these crises, I'm sorry for. Perhaps one envies them. The illness of need, which is love, the sense that one is incomplete, that one is, as it were, limping on one leg of the heart until one is with the other being. The insane things we do, the phone calls in the night, the trips to the airports, the attempts to guess where the other person is, completely irrational. I think life would be beggarly without them. But I repeat, the great ascetic, the saint, the pure metaphysician, perhaps the great mathematician, has no time for this.
You have.
I've had it, and now that I'm really very old, perhaps it's getting worse. I'm now beginning to understand Yeats's great poems about the rage of love in the old. And when Dylan Thomas writes, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. He's talking both of his father's death and of the terror of the eclipse of love. I think when one will no longer have a physical shock at the sight of a beautiful woman passing by, of meeting the eyes of a beloved, then the winter will have begun.
quote you, "What other human presence can be stranger to myself than at times I am?" you asked. Did the image of yourself as a stranger to yourself change the last years, getting older?
This is, of course, as you know better than I, the attempt to return to the Delphic oracle's commandment that we should know ourselves, or to the subtitle of the book, An Exam in Life, the Socratic assertion that only an exam in life is worth living. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe there are very happy people who don't present themselves for that exam, because one usually fails. If one is honest with oneself, that's what the word errata means. The margin of disappointment is very great, and if you're really taught to think and to feel against yourself, which is one of Hegel's great teachings, and I am a Hegelian in some senses, the lives one should have led, the other possibilities, get disturbingly vivid.
The more you grow.
The more you examine what actually has been. And you begin thinking of the moments in your life which are unbearably shaming and shameful, which are disgraceful, deeply disgraceful. The moments when you were a coward, or when you betrayed someone close to you, or when you lied profoundly, or when you simply did second-rate work, when you know that it was second-rate. The last judgment is first of all ours. The tribunal is ours. I have a terrible suspicion that the real last judgment in the other world is a group of French professors. I have a real nightmare, and there'll be a long line like at the baccalaureate, and it will exactly be a French system with 1/18 of a point sending you to hell. So I hope I'm wrong. But somehow in this Kafka world, it's Monsieur le Professeur of the Sorbonne who are sitting up there waiting for the concours, and it's run like a concours. I'm very worried about that. If it's true, I at least want to be on the jury, but that's my own arrogant and selfish hope. No. If you appear in front of the court of your own remembrance and call for consolation, the best consolation is forgetting, and I'm a very bad forgetter. I wish I weren't. There are quite awful moments in one's life, but let me step a little away from the anecdote to raise some of the taboo subjects, some of the things people will not face in themselves, why they're strangers to themselves. In the last few days, we have had the dreadful news of the earthquakes at Assisi in Italy and in Umbria. And things have been destroyed which I haven't yet seen or which I have seen. And in the streets 2 or 3 days later, say the journalists, the homeless people were screaming with rage, why is the whole world talking about 1/8 of an inch of a Giotto fresco or a Cimabue fragment, and no one is helping us, the living? I have no answer to that. During the war, the British diplomat Harold Nicholson was asked if you had to choose between the life of your son, who was fighting at Monte Cassino, and the survival of the city of Florence, which would you choose? And that